Elon Musk humiliates Newsom again, this time as California's fixes prove fake, as Elon calls them, with the state now having to have historical cuts for essential programs to avoid bankruptcy. 2 years ago, the state bragged about a $100 billion surplus. Now that number feels like fiction. California has a massive deficit, and emergency borrowing is the only thing keeping the lights on. According to the Legislative Analyst's Office, the shortfall has blown past $73 billion, nearly double, which is far higher than the governor's numbers are saying, and proof that the recovery plan was built on sand. And that is Musk's whole point. Newsom's fixes weren't real. The gap didn't shrink, it exploded. They were fake fixes dressed up by the media to look like a success that has now caused a giant financial problem for the state. Every promise, every fix, every reform was just theater. And now Musk's warnings sound less like criticism and more like prophecy. When you trace the collapse step by step, the pattern isn't just obvious, it's predictable. California's boom years were built on tech-fueled capital gains and a small number of ultra-rich taxpayers. As the stock market surged, state coffers overflowed, and Newsom treated that spike as if it were structural wealth, not a temporary bubble. When the tech market cooled and those same high earners pulled back or left the state, the illusion cracked. The exodus wasn't random. It was driven by punishing tax rates, expensive housing, and regulatory sprawl that made California one of the hardest places in America to scale or even stay. Once revenues crashed, the hole widened faster than any cut could fix. And instead of owning the miscalculation, Newsom blamed external shocks. Washington, inflation, global markets, anything but the fragility of California's own system. That is what Musk calls reckless. Not the downturn itself, but pretending that the math never mattered. Newsom's team touted the deletion of roughly 10,000 vacant state positions as proof of belt-tightening. An easy headline that sparked jokes online about cutting phantom jobs to patch a very real hole. Elon Musk called it bizarre, and the public instinctively saw the gap. You can't sell painful sacrifice when no actual workers are let go. As Musk said, Newsom will go down in history as one of the worst governors of America. More importantly, this is classic spreadsheet hygiene, not reform. Even supporters admit it mostly sweeps idle authorizations out of department ledgers for one-off savings, variously estimated from hundreds of millions up to $1.5 billion, while leaving the big drivers untouched. In other words, Sacramento trimmed ghosts, declared discipline, and moved on. No change to the cost curve, no durable fix. That's the mistake. Governing by optics and vacancy scrub pressers instead of tackling structural spending. When the boom hit, Newsom treated temporary revenue like a permanent raise. Programs widened, promises multiplied, and projects swelled. Then revenues rolled over and the obligations didn't. Rather than reset the cost base, he leaned on solutions. $27.6 billion in near-term moves and multi-year fixes advertised as closing the gap, plus roughly $32.8 billion in 2-year cuts and shifts. But much of it was deferrals, borrowing, and optimistic revenue marks, not structural reform. Meanwhile, cost drivers that he championed, like Medi-Cal expansions that blew past estimates, opened new holes, forced stopgap borrowing, and the UI Trust Fund still carries interest the general fund must pay. The real test isn't the press release, it's whether families feel the shortfall shrink. If the scoreboard still shows a canyon, you didn't fix the leak, you repainted the meter. Musk has used California's high-speed rail as shorthand for what he calls Sacramento's waste and delay. When a short bridge to nowhere segment went viral in May 2024, he replied on X with nothing but a crying emoji, a visual dunk meant to say the project is a boondoggle without using words. The criticism landed against a backdrop of ever-rising budgets and slipping timelines. The initial $33 billion statewide vision has been repeatedly revised upward, with official documents and coverage noting tens of billions more and service pushed into the next decade. Beyond the emoji, Musk has put it in blunt terms. In a widely shared X post, he wrote, "The California high-speed rail project is an example of where incompetence and the limit is indistinguishable from fraud." He has also reacted to cost headlines by calling the situation crazy. Together, those lines frame his case that Newsom's team keeps pouring money into a mega project that fails basic execution tests, proof in Musk's telling of systemic mismanagement rather than bad luck. The project that voters backed in 2008 at roughly $33 to $40 billion is now commonly described in the $89 to $128 billion range, with initial service shifted into the 2030s. The latest authority update pegs a MRST Bakersfield opening around 2032 and still shows a multi-billion-dollar funding gap. These cost overruns and schedule slips are exactly what Musk points to as evidence of Sacramento mismanagement. Instead of being upfront with people, Newsom used quick fixes that only look good on paper. He delayed payments, shifted money between accounts, and counted on efficiency savings that the state's own analysts said wouldn't last. When delayed taxes from the 2022-2023 storms finally came in, the budget gap showed up anyway, just like the analysts predicted. They said the real shortfall was much bigger, closer to $58 to $73 billion. At the same time, the state kept pouring money into huge projects that kept getting more expensive and taking longer, like the high-speed rail. Those costs made it harder to fix real financial problems. Even the so-called savings programs didn't deliver. Many agencies fell short of the targets that were supposed to balance the books. In 2020-2021, Musk and Tesla made their break. Musk personally moved to Texas in December 2020 after blasting California as complacent. Then, in October 2021, he announced Tesla would move its headquarters from Palo Alto to Austin while keeping the Fremont factory running and citing housing costs and regulation as strains. They weren't alone. Oracle, December 2020, and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, December 2020, shifted their HQs to Texas, and Palantir moved its headquarters from Palo Alto to Denver in 2020. Moves cheered by Texas officials and framed by execs and VPs as escapes from high costs, heavy regulation, and COVID-era policy friction. Prominent investors like Joe Lonsdale and Keith Rabois publicly criticized California while relocating their firms and lives to Austin and Miami. And this conflict got worse when California introduced a new electric vehicle rebate plan in late 2024 that, according to several reports, would have blocked Tesla from qualifying because of market share limits and price caps. Musk immediately reacted on X, writing, "Even though Tesla is the only company who manufactures their EVs in California, this is insane." He argued that the rule punished the one automaker actually producing EVs in the state, turning what was meant to be a reward for clean innovation into a penalty for success. News coverage later explained that the state wanted to direct subsidies towards smaller car makers or cheaper models, but Musk said that logic missed the point. In his view, the plan showed how Newsom's government prioritized optics and political messaging over real results. Programs meant to help clean energy, he said, end up hurting the very companies that make California look like a climate tech leader. Then, in July 2024, Musk dropped another major announcement. Posted, "This is the final straw. Because of this law and the many others that preceded it, attacking both families and companies, SpaceX will now move its headquarters from Hawthorne, California to Starbase, Texas, and XHQ will move to Austin." He directly linked those moves to California's political direction, saying that the state's laws had crossed the line for both business and personal freedom. In follow-up posts, Musk accused Sacramento of pushing policies that damage family rights and the overall business climate. Whether or not the relocations affected many workers right away, his message was clear. Under Newsom, California's rules were driving innovators out. From Tesla's exclusion and rebate plans to cultural laws he called the final straw, Musk painted a pattern. Decisions that punish builders, discourage investment, and make even the state's biggest success stories want to leave. And today, Musk continues daily verbal attacks on Gavin Newsom, using X and media outlets to lash out at the governor's policies, crisis management, and political decisions. It is clear that Musk is serious about showing everyone in America how bad of a governor Newsom is.